He pounded his fist. Frankly, it makes me scared. And we're taking a break.
You know, you have this narrative in your mind saying that no, I will literally you up.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in criminal interrogation and body language analysis, and over 10 years as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stages and television shows all over the world. In this video, we are going to dive into 8 scientifically proven ways to know that someone's going to get aggressive before they do, and 7 scientifically proven ways to de-escalate the situation and avoid physical conflict, whether it's at your workplace, in a social situation, or even at home. So earlier this year, I uploaded a video on the channel all about how to recognize manipulation and how to counter it. And I've always loosely considered that to be the most important video on this channel. First of all, because of the subject matter, and second of all, because of all the comments I've gotten from you, the viewers, saying how eye-opening it was and how much it changed your ability to deal with that kind of thing. Since that video, I've constantly thought about how I can make more content like that. Well, last week in my behavioral analysis of Derrell Brooks during his trial, I talked about certain signs that indicated to me that he was about to get physically aggressive. And in the comments, there was a subscriber who works in the healthcare profession who voiced how valuable this kind of information would be. A list of behaviors that indicates that someone might get aggressive. Now, as a result, that comment got a ton of activity, a lot of people liking it, commenting on it, expressing how much value you would find in something like that. And to me, it became priority number 1. And so in this video, we're gonna look at a bunch of signs that would allow you to know that someone is about to get aggressive, and more importantly, we're going to look at ways to calm the situation down and avoid physical conflict. Now, quick warning, this video will include several clips of physical altercations. In fact, in a lot of the cases, I actually cut the fighting part out because we're looking at what leads up to it more importantly, but in some cases, we're still seeing that aggression and some physical contact. Just want you to be aware of that. So without further ado, let's dive right into the science of pre-aggression tells. And I want to start right back with the source, Derrell Brooks, during his trial last week. Now, there was a moment we didn't cover in the analysis, but I want to look at it now because it really relates to this topic. So at some point, there was a discussion happening between the judge and the state attorneys, and Derrell Brooks was giving a look to the judge. And this look caught the attention of a lot of media. In fact, it was so intense that the judge literally had to call for a break because she voiced that she was scared from the way he was looking at her. So I want you to look at that and try to look at the different signs only on his face, just facial expressions on this one, that would indicate that he's having pretty aggressive thoughts.
Criminal trespass to dwelling from 2006.
Right, I need to take a break. This man right now is having a stare down with me. It's very disrespectful. He pounded his fist. Frankly, it makes me scared. And we're taking a break.
Pretty intense. Now, what we're seeing there is the universal expression of anger. In other words, wherever you go in the world, you're likely to see that facial expression on the face of people who are angry. Now, the original researcher who discovered universal facial expressions, including anger, was Paul Ekman. But since then, there's been a ton of research done on the facial expressions of anger. And one of my favorite studies was conducted by UC Santa Barbara in collaboration with Griffith University from Australia, and what they found was amazing. So what they did is they isolated each component of the anger facial expression, which we're going to cover in a second, but they took them separately and they showed observers 2 pictures, one where this component is present and one where it isn't. So let's take, for example, the furrowed eyebrows. They showed one picture where a person had the furrowed eyebrows and another one where they didn't. And they wanted to see what the observers noted as the difference. In all cases, in every single case, with every single one of these signals, they felt that the person who's exhibiting this sign is physically stronger. So basically what that means is, if we take every single part of the facial expression of anger individually, they each signal to someone that we are stronger and more capable of physical harm. Now, anger is the facial expression that we show when we're not getting what we want out of a social interaction. We feel like by doing this, we can intimidate the other person into giving us what we want. If we continue to not get what we want, sometimes some people resort to getting physical, which is why each and every single component of the angry face can be a sign of pre-aggression. And by the way we know that the angry face is genetic and not learned is because we can even see it in children who are born blind. In other words, there's no way they saw someone do it and learn how to do it themselves, but in situations where they're not getting what they want, they will exhibit all of these components of the angry face. So let's look at them now, one by one, and dive into how they can indicate aggression before it happens. First up is the furrowed eyebrows. When the eyebrows come down and closer together like this, a classic sign of anger. Now, there's been a lot of research done on this body part, the eyebrows, because if you look at early humans, our ancestors, we had way more pronounced and protruding eyebrows, but they were much less mobile. As we evolved, they went a little flatter and we can move them a lot more. Research at the University of York determined that the reason we evolved this way is because this mobility of the eyebrows gave us a massive edge when it came to communication. We use our eyebrows to communicate a lot. You can show good intention and approval with the eyebrows up. You can signal curiosity. So we use our eyebrows to really communicate without using our words. And we've been doing this for a very long time. So in anger, the eyebrows come down and closer together like this. And there's quite a few theories as to why this happens. One popular theory is that it protects the eyes from danger or projectiles or from being harmed. Another popular theory is that it mimics the more defined and bigger eyebrow bone structure of our ancestors. So all this to say that furrowed eyebrows is a sign of anger and potential aggression ahead. Now, can it mean something else? Of course it can. We furrow our eyebrows when we think, when we concentrate, when we're skeptical of something. So you typically want to see more than just one of the signs that we're discussing today, but the furrowed eyebrows is definitely one of them. The second sign of anger and potential aggression ahead is tension in the jaw and in the lips. And this is something that manifests in several ways. One, which is quite classic, is simply tension in the jaw to where you could see it over here like that. So you're going to see the tension over here. Sometimes some people grind their teeth together, so you're going to see a bit of a shift, that kind of thing, but there's still tension. And with the lips, once again, there's a couple of ways you might see this. One is the thinning of the lips, which is the most common, like that, so just straight tension. You might see more of a puckering, which is what we saw with Derrell Brooks in that clip. It's more of that kind of thing. So the tension is vertical, but also horizontal. And you might also see it lift a little, almost like a mouth shrug up here, like that. But either way, we're getting tension in the lips. It's not just a lift like this. It's tension. Now again, please remember that tension in the lips and in the jaw is also consistent with stress or holding back an opinion. Sometimes when we don't want to say something, we do this kind of thing because we're just kind of trying to keep our mouth shush, like in disagreement type situations. So you might see it isolated in different circumstances. So once again, we're looking at multiple things today, and the more you see a combination of these, the more you can be confident that there's some aggression coming. But alone, jaw tension and lip tension can mean a lot of different things. Okay, the third sign is one that I do give a lot of importance to, even if it's alone. I think this is one of the bigger signs of aggression coming, or at least really high anger. To show you the impact of this one small gesture, I'm gonna right now show you two pictures of me, right now here side by side. And in one of these, I'm going to do that gesture. In the other one, I'm going to do every other gesture that goes into anger, but I'm not going to do that one. Here we go. Take a look at A and B. Okay, so just based on reflex alone, without trying to microanalyze it, does one of those two feel more angry than the other? Well, if you're like the majority of people, you will agree that B looks more angry or aggressive than A. In fact, A can be consistent with someone who's confused or in deep thought, but B is unmistakably angry, and it's because of one thing. In fact, I want you to try to figure it out without me telling you. So go back if you have to and look at the pictures if you haven't figured it out yet. And what am I doing different in B that I wasn't doing in A? It's one small difference that makes B feel quite a bit more angry than A. Pause the video, head down to the comments, let me know what you think. Let me know what difference you're seeing. Okay, now that you've had a chance to take a look at both of them, I'm going to tell you what the difference is. It is lifting the upper eyelid. In fact, I want you to notice how if I don't change anything else about my face, if I stay very neutral, just lifting those upper eyelids can look quite angry. Check it out. Nothing else. Just that upper eyelid lifting like that can look quite angry. So why do the eyelids go up when we're angry? We might look at other emotions that have that same thing, where the eyes open up. And there are three: anger, surprise, and fear. With all three of these emotions, the eyes open up. Now they're a little bit different. With surprise, a lot more things open up. Like mouth opens, eyes open, eyebrows go up, but the eyes definitely open up. With fear, very similar to surprise, but there's more of a pulling back of this kind of thing. But surprise and fear are very close to one another. But again, the eyes will open up. And with anger, we have the eyebrows, the nostril, the tension in the jaw, and those upper eyelids opening up. So why does that happen? What do these three emotions have in common? Well, the thing that all three of those emotions have in common, surprise, fear, and anger, is that we experience all three in the face of a perceived threat. When something happens and we're trying to gauge what that threat is, all three of these emotions could be a response to that. So why would the eyes open up in the face of a perceived threat? Well, the answer might be in research conducted at the University of Toronto, where they determined that when our eyes are wide open, we register 9% more visual information in our peripherals than if our eyes are neutral. And the worst we do is when we squint. And this is consistent with disgust. With disgust, everything closes up. We squint, we scrunch the nose, we pucker the mouth, because with disgust, we want less information. We want less of the smell. We want less of the image. We want less experience. But with surprise, fear, and anger, we want as much information to be able to figure out what to do next. So those eyes opening up is focusing on that target and getting all the information that we can, because this is our target. We need to know everything because there might be an attack coming and we need to know what we're up against. Okay, now we're gonna move on and look at some more signs that might indicate that someone's about to get aggressive and ways to de-escalate the situation to avoid physical conflict altogether. But before we do me a huge favor, take a quick second and hit that like button. It really does help get this video out there, which I think is really important, particularly for this video, because there could be someone out there who can really benefit from this information if they find themselves in a situation like this. Also, hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on for more practical psychology content. Okay, next up, the fourth sign of anger and aggression has two different terms in body language. Some call it nostril flaring, others call it wing dilation. But it means the same thing. It means the nostrils are opening up, and it goes right back to what we said in the previous expression, and it's taking in information and taking in oxygen. As we evolved, the sense of smell was quite important for us to know what's going on. So in anger, once again, we're trying to get that information. That's why the eyes are opening up a little bit more. The nose might open up to help us with the sense of smell. Other researchers believe that it's also a way for us to get more oxygen because a fight is physically taxing and we know we're gonna need more oxygen, so we're getting ready for that. Whatever the reason, however, nostrils flaring is definitely a part of the angry expression. All right, so now we know what the expression of anger is like. So the furrowed eyebrows, we have the wing dilation or the nose opening up, we have tension in the lips and in the jaw, and we have those upper eyelids opening up. But now let's move on and look at some gestures that aren't necessarily stagnant, but in action. So something that happens in terms of movement that might indicate that a physical altercation is on its way, starting with the one that inspired this entire video. So in last week's analysis of Derrell Brooks, we saw him yelling at the judge. And there was some very interesting stuff happening on his face as he was doing that. Take a look.
So I need to make a record of some
I need to make a record too.
You don't
When am I going to get the chance to do that?
All right, I need to make a record.
Okay, so here we are seeing two very big signs that someone's getting worked up and potentially about to get aggressive. In fact, I think that in that situation, if he wasn't in court and there wasn't a desk separating him and there wasn't security guards, that situation would have gone physical. And there are two reasons I believe this. They're both in this area. One is the chin jut. In almost every video that we're going to look at today, almost every video, we're we're gonna see some form of the chin jut. The chin jut is whether we're screaming or yelling or even in silence, the chin protrudes forward like this. So I might be yelling at someone like this and we're just launching at them with the chin. And this is just aggressive thoughts being thrown at the person. And that chin is just throwing these thoughts at them. The second thing that we saw there with Derrell Brooks is the bottom lip protrusion. So as he said, I want to make a record too, we saw this too kind of thing. And that is a really exaggerated side effect of the chin jut. So sometimes you'll see people chin jut like this as they yell at you, but sometimes that bottom lip comes out and they accentuate, then they go something like you, like this, and you see that bottom lip coming out. That is a highly aggressive gesture, and honestly, I wouldn't need to see much more than that. If someone's yelling at you like this and you see that bottom lip come out as they say something, obviously it's hard to do that without the furrowed eyebrows. I can't really imagine someone doing that, yelling, it's weird. So you're probably gonna see those furrowed eyebrows at the same time. To me, it's time to de-escalate instantly. Okay, for this next sign, I have to make a confession. This is something that I was hoping to hide from this community for as long as possible. I always knew that it was eventually gonna come out because it had to, and now's that time. I have a confession to make. I watch 90 Day Fiancé a lot. I know, but we all have a thing, okay? This is my thing. For those of you who don't know, 90 Day Fiancé is a popular reality show where they follow the lives of couples in which one half of the couple is American and the other half is not. And they kind of follow their journey and their relationship and all that good stuff. Now, the reason I watch the show is, for one, it's hard to not. It's one of those things where it's like, it's hard to look away. But secondly, I think it's one of the best shows out there to study behavior and nonverbal communication, because very often one half of the couple doesn't speak English or speaks English very poorly, so they have to communicate, non-verbally, and we get to see a lot in what's going on, and we even get to see how other cultures have a lot in common with us when it comes to nonverbal communication. So very often I'll recognize emotions in people who live in a small isolated village that would look the exact same over here in the Western world. Anyways, all this to say that in 90 Day Fiancé, there is an individual, a character, a human, a person, by the name of Angela. And for those of you who watch the show, you're getting excited because Angela is a raging bull. She is a whole lot of woman. And she has a very short fuse. Anger and aggression come very easily to her. The moment she doesn't get what she wants, it's a very easy response for her. And we're going to look at an interaction that she had here with her now husband, Michael. So she's from America and he is from Lagos, Nigeria. And this is a discussion they're having where she blows a fuse and gets quite tense. And we're going to use this for the next point. So take a look at this clip.
I can't be staying here.
Then you make your choice. You want money?
We've been, wait.
There's no reason. I don't give a about no money.
Calm down.
You and your money, you opportunist?
Of course not.
Okay, so that's Angela. And this is an interesting clip because the gesture that we're looking at is very common in pre-aggression, but in her case, it happens after she kicks the table. And the reason harming objects or being aggressive towards objects is not on my list of pre-aggression is because to me, that's already aggression. If in a situation, someone throws an object, smashes an object, punches an object, kicks an object, we're already in aggression. To me personally, it's too late to de-escalate. In that case, I would put as much distance as I can between me and that person if possible, and then de-escalate later, resume a calm interaction later, because the moment they hurt something, it's only a matter of time before they turn that on you. But in this case, what happens after she kicks the table is a really good demonstration of this pre-aggression sign that we're looking at, so I use this clip. After she kicks the table, we see what Joe Navarro, the author of the best-selling book, What Everybody Is Saying, calls ventral denial. Now, the ventral side is this. It's the front of our body. This is where all our sensitive organs are, and we are one of the only animals on this planet that stands straight up to where our organs are exposed. And for that reason, we're very protective of this area of our body. If something happens here, it can really affect our health or our lives. So when we get defensive, very often we turn our body away from the target or whatever we see anger or aggression towards, because we know that if we get aggressive, they might retaliate, so we're getting ready to defend ourselves by ventral denial. While we're on the subject of ventral denial and turning your body away, I want to mention a friend of mine who helped me a lot with this video, and it's a name a lot of you will recognize. His name is Scott Rouse, and he is the brilliant body language analyst who wrote Understanding Body Language, one of my favorite books on the subject. I will leave a link in the description to both books that I mentioned just now if you want to learn a little bit more about body language and subtle signs and what they might indicate in terms of intent. But Scott is just the man when it comes to this stuff. He has enormous experience training law enforcement. He's consulted on very high-profile interrogations, so pre-aggression is something he knows very well. And he reminded me that another reason that we do the ventral denial is to back up our dominant foot. So we can see that once again in the clip. Not only does she turn her body away, but she plants her other foot down. So when we're going to take a swing at someone, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for our feet to be side by side. We don't have enough momentum and we're easier to knock over. So to get a firm foot on the ground, quite literally, we might back up one of our feet, most often the dominant one. Not always, but most often. One foot's going to go back to give us, first of all, that opportunity to turn the ventral side away for better protection, but second, to have more momentum for a swing and just better grounding. So these are two things you'll often see together because it's hard to get one foot back without turning the body a little, and it's also hard to turn the body sideways without moving that leg back a little bit. So often they come hand in hand, and it's something you want to look for. So if you're talking to someone, they could be seated and you might see this kind of thing, like we saw with Angela, or they could be standing and you see them turn their midsection away with their foot moving away as well, and that could be a very big sign that aggression is ahead. I also want you to remember this. If the head is also turning away, this could just be someone trying to disengage. You want to look for these things happening while the eyes are still on you or on a certain target. It's that discrepancy. It's not the turning away. But if I'm still staring here, especially with those eyelids up, and my body's turning away, it's time to de-escalate and even potentially put some distance between you, because this is one of the things that's closer to that physical altercation. They might be getting ready to take that swing. Okay, for this next sign of pre-aggression, we're going to take a look at potentially two of the biggest reality stars in the world, and it's the Kardashians, Kim and Kourtney, who had a physical altercation that Kourtney started. And as we look at this clip, you're going to notice other signs that we looked at so far. You're going to see other things that are happening in Kourtney's body language, but the focus of this is going to be one that we haven't talked about yet. Take a look.
But you act like I don't do. Do you know all you have this narrative in your mind saying that no, I will literally you up. You're literally. Don't ever come at me like that. I swear to God, I'll punch you in your face. Don't.
Okay, there are a lot of really good lessons there about anger and pre-aggression, one of which is this. If you're the type of person who deals with people who have had a lot of cosmetic surgery on their face, or a person who's had a lot of cosmetic surgery on their face, more specifically Botox, you're not going to get much with the eyebrows. This is like the kryptonite of body language analysts. When we have someone who's had a lot of Botox, because we're really not going to get much in that upper face. This is a situation where I feel like we would have seen more furrowed brows or more activity in the eyebrows if Kourtney and Kim didn't have Botox in their forehead. So I think it's affecting how much movement we see there, because we're really not getting that much, even when we can see other signs of anger. For example, with Kourtney, we're definitely seeing that upper eyelid open up as she's focusing on Kim and she's yelling at her. But the gesture that we're focusing on right now has a few terms in body language. It's often called batoning, but basically, simply, it's brisk gestures. And this is one of the biggest indicators that aggression is coming up. And it's when someone's yelling and we're seeing a lot of these jerky gestures with the hands. So illustrators are the gestures we use when we speak to illustrate what we're saying. They're usually synced with what we're saying, but they're usually pretty smooth. When they start to be a little more brisk, this is aggression. It's anger. And a lot of rappers use this to denote parts of their rap song that's a little more aggressive, a little more brisk. So they go more to these gestures when more angry sentiments are coming out. So Allan and Barbara Pease, who wrote the definitive book of body language, did research on hand gestures. And they determined that a finger up like this is the one that creates the most disconnect between a speaker and a listener and feels the most aggressive. It's because it kind of resembles a stick or a sword or a weapon, and it triggers our fight or flight response. So this is a very aggressive way to yell at someone. So combined with those brisk gestures, when you have this can denote someone subconsciously trying to hurt someone with a weapon. Now, this wasn't part of the research, but I bet that if it was, it would rank even more aggressive because rarely we see this gesture. Somebody who gestures like this. And to me, this is super aggressive because this is subconsciously, obviously denoting a gun. So we might see this kind of thing, but you might also see it in the fist, you might see it in open palm. It's more about these brisk gestures that are more choppy. So in this case, we have Kourtney. First of all, we see those chin juts. That chin's coming forward. We're seeing the upper eyelid like this, and we're seeing this, and we're seeing this kind of thing. Also, I want you to notice, once she gets up and goes at Kim gets up, and we see ventral denial from both of them. As Kim gets ready to hit, dominant leg goes back, she turns her body away just before that hit comes in, and as she protects herself, Kourtney also has ventral denial. Ventral denial is such a classic body language signal that denotes defensiveness or aggression coming up. Okay, for the eighth and final sign of aggression before it happens, we're gonna look at a clip from a show called Mob Wives. Now, this is a reality show that I don't watch, so I don't really know who these characters are, but I found this clip online and I thought it was such a great example of not just what we're gonna talk about now, but a lot of the other signs that we saw. I'm gonna play this clip on mute because if I censored every bad word coming out of their mouth, I would pretty much end up censoring the whole thing anyways. But this is such a great example of how nonverbal communication works. You don't need to hear what they're saying to know that there's anger and aggression here. So if we look at the blonde woman, we see a lot of the signs we talked about so far. We're seeing that chin jut, the chin is coming out as she's yelling. We're seeing the furrowed eyebrows. We're seeing that upper eyelid being open. She's focused on her target there. We're seeing those gestures. We're seeing those brisk, sudden gestures. There's pointing to herself, but then there's, her palm is flat as she's gesturing towards the brunette. If we look at the brunette, we're getting that chin jut as well just before she gets up. We're seeing the brisk gestures with the hand. We're seeing that one finger pointing with that gesture. So a lot of what we talked about so far is happening. But the last sign that I want to talk about is really interesting and quite paradoxical, which happens a lot in body language. There are some situations in body language which opposite things can mean the same thing, but often for different reasons. This is one of them. And what we're talking about here today is blink rate. Blink rate is one of the most researched body language signs. And there's been so much research done on why this happens, even within certain demographics, why it happens, and in aggression and in stress, what happens to blink rate. So the average blink rate is somewhere between 16 to 20 a minute. We blink 16 to 20 times in a minute. This could vary. It could be higher for some people, lower for some people, but that's more or less where we land. Now, there are reasons your blink rate might go up, and there are reasons your blink rate might go down. And in aggression or in anger, both might happen. Let me explain. There is a ton of research, including one of my favorite studies from the University of Plymouth, that have demonstrated without doubt that when cognitive load increases, blink rate decreases. In other words, when we're accessing our memory or focusing on a task, our blink rate goes down. We blink much less as we focus. But there is also research, notably from University of New York, and they found that when you're processing information or committing information to memory or dealing with information, blink rate goes up. Also, a lot of studies have shown that blink rate goes up with anxiety and stress. So different things can alter the blink rate. So why then is it that in anger, or more specifically in pre-aggression, we might see both those things? Blink rate might suddenly go up or blink rate might suddenly go down. Well, it depends on what's happening in the person's brain. If they're processing something and it gets them aggressive, that processing can cause a blink rate increase or even an eye flutter. It's not uncommon that sometimes someone hears something, they go, you want to say that again? And then they get aggressive. Like they're processing what just happened and they're dealing with it, and they deal with it in the worst way possible. So we see that processing happening. Also, anger and aggression can cause stress and anxiety. So we might see that blink rate go up as they're getting aggressive. But on the other hand, if we go back to what we said earlier about that upper eyelid going up, when we're angry, really angry, we're trying to get in as much information as we can. So we are quite focused in that moment, and focus can decrease blink rate. So that person might be focused and just trying to take in as much information as they can, or they're locked on their target. In fact, if we go back to that clip of Derrell Brooks looking at the judge, that entire clip, he never blinks. In fact, this is not the only time he didn't blink for extended periods of time. There were many moments during his trial where he was angry at the judge and we didn't see him blink for a long time. He was just focused on the target of his aggression. So once again, going back to the two ladies who were arguing there for mob wives, we definitely saw both those things. If we look at the blonde, there's really not much blinking going on. She is focused on the person that she's angry at. We can see that, the eyes open, she's staring her down, and even if she's aggressive and moving really fast, we're not seeing that many blinks. On the other one, on the other hand, we see a distinct flutter just before she decides to bite back. The camera is cutting to her, so I feel like we kind of catch the end of that flutter, but it's definitely there. There's this quick succession of blinks as she's processing, and again, that processing leads to a bad decision because she decides to get physical at that point. Okay, so surprise, there's actually 9 signs. I said 8 all the way up until now. There's actually a 9th. And it's quite simply seeing those fingers come inwards to form a fist. Now, fingers coming inwards is something that does denote stress. As stress goes up, our fingers come inwards. Sometimes it's to make a fist, sometimes it's to pacify or massage like this. This could be quite self-soothing. But if you're seeing that ventral denial and some of these other signs, maybe their foot is stepping back and you see that hand going into a fist by their side, that's a pretty big sign that they intend on using it. So it's time to de-escalate immediately. Okay, so now we know how to recognize anger and aggression before it physically manifests. And if you look at the clips in this video, you can go back and look at them. I'll leave the links in the description if you want to look at them entirely, or you could just go on YouTube and research, physical fights on reality shows. You'll notice that in a majority of cases, there's some sort of escalation. One person says something, they don't get the response they want, so they say something else, and this person says, that person says, and then it gets into a physical altercation. And in that process, you'll see a lot of these signs, especially that chin jut and that yelling and these brisk movements with the finger up like this. That's very, very common in these kinds of fights. It's more rare that it happens in an instant. It could happen, but it's more rare. So what I'm basically saying is that in most cases, if you see these signs early enough, there's going to be multiple opportunities to de-escalate. Basically, the person isn't getting what they want, and now we're going to talk about how to just stop them from climbing up that ladder to get to the physical altercation. Now, there is a lot of work out there on de-escalation, how to effectively de-escalate a tense situation, and I absolutely encourage you to do your own research and read up on it and see what makes sense to you. I'll leave a bunch of great articles in the description, but my favorite method of de-escalation is something that was actually published in Nursing Times magazine in 2016 by Mike Lowry, and it's called the Lowline method, and it is phenomenal. It is backed by a lot of research, and he basically broke de-escalation down into a 7-step method. So each letter in Lowline stands for something, and L is listen. So as part of listen, they talk about recognizing the nonverbal signs. So you're actively listening as opposed to kind of just trying to contribute to the conversation, trying to get your point in. You're actively listening and you're looking for these signs. So remember, looking for these body language signs is not passive. It is active. When the person's in front of you, you feel like something's off, you want to make sure, scan the face, scan the arms, look for these signs. And there's a good opportunity to also just listen to what they're saying. Calm down. Don't try to push your narrative, because that will, if someone's angry, that's just going to escalate their anger. Because again, remember, anger is they don't like the response they're getting. They feel like you're not validating them. So sometimes just stop, observe, listen. As part of lesson, you can also ask open-ended questions, something along the lines of, can you tell me more about that? Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by that? So open-ended questions about what they want, about what they're trying to get across. That's all part of listen. The next one, O, is offer. So basically you're just offering help, offering an ear. You're just, instead of trying to take, you're offering. So first of all, don't invalidate the anger. Don't say you shouldn't be angry. I don't see why you're angry. Again, that's not the response they want. It's going to have the reverse effect. It's likely to increase the anger as opposed to decrease it. But with offer, you basically offer them a chance to blow steam, get whatever it is off their chest. So you might say something like, I can see that you're angry. I'm trying to understand why. Can you help me understand? So again, think of offer as offering a lending ear or a chance to vent. Next up is W for wait. Now here's a secret about emotions. We typically don't stay in an emotional state for too long. Most emotions last a couple of seconds and then they go away. Think about happiness, for example. Something happens that makes you really happy. You smile, oh my God, this is really nice, so nice. And then nobody holds this for that long and keeps talking. We're happy and then it goes away. Surprise is the same, fear is the same, anger is the same. Sadness, depending on what it is, can stay for a very long time. And if it does, it can really have serious repercussions on your well-being. But most emotions don't stay for too long. So with W for wait, simply be patient. You don't always have to have an answer right away when they say something, because if you're answering and they're answering, it might actually just make it more tense. Breathe, calm down. Often we're very social beings. We're very aware of the state of other people. If you're calm and you're relaxed and they say something and you're patient and you answer slowly, they might match that mood and they might just come down to meet you in that calmness. So just be patient, take your time, pauses are okay. They allow everyone to just calm down and they give that anger time to just melt away. Next up is another L for look. And by look, basically what they mean is pay attention to the person. Now, look does not necessarily mean maintain intense eye contact. Remember everything we learned about the eyes today. Staring or glaring, that kind of those eyes open, giving focus to something can also mean that they're a target, and it can signal aggression and increase the anger. So if you're just staring at them, it might not be a good idea. But look at their face, look at them, give them your attention. Make sure they understand that they have your undivided attention. Remember, when we're angry, we're trying to get a point across and get something back, and we get angry because that's not happening. So if they know and feel that they have your attention, it's much less likely that it's going to escalate. Here's a quick bonus tip for look coming from me. If you work in healthcare and you typically work with a specific type of demographic, individuals who have a certain condition or a certain disorder, do yourself a favor, go on Google and search eye contact with that specific demographic. Because there are certain conditions or certain disorders that don't like intense or extended eye contact, and others that do. So look it up, make sure you have a pretty good understanding, if you work with a certain demographic a lot, how they tend to handle eye contact. The next one is something we've talked about on the channel a lot. In this case, it's I for incline, but on the channel, I refer to it as tilt, or more specifically, head tilt. The head tilt is a very researched gesture and is consistent with comfort and sympathy. It's very rare that we tilt our heads if we're not comfortable, because it exposes a big vulnerability, which is the neck. When we're feeling stressed or anxious or vulnerable, we protect the neck in different ways. But when we're feeling comfortable, we expose it like this. Now, it can mean other things as well, like when we're suspicious, like come on, or when we're curious about something, or when we're feeling sympathy towards someone, we do the head tilt, but in all those cases, we're also comfortable. In other words, if you're uncomfortable and curious or suspicious, it's unlikely that you'll have a head tilt. You'll be more straight ahead and you'll still have the signs of curiosity, but with that head tilt, it's comfort and it can also be other things. Now, head tilt is very often used in therapy, in modeling, in all kinds of industries to make the person feel at ease. We subconsciously pick up on head tilts. And when we see someone head tilting, we see that vulnerability, we see that comfort, and often we get comfortable as well. So quite simply, while you're listening, while you're offering a lending ear, while you're being patient, that head tilt can really go a long way in making someone feel comfortable and like you are being sympathetic towards them. Next is N for nod. Nod is another gesture that is highly researched and obviously is a sign of positivity and agreement. And in this case, the person will feel like you are definitely hearing them out. Now, you don't want to sit there and nod the whole time, but on key moments where they say something that you could see that they're really trying to get across, you can just nod as a way for them to understand that you're connecting. Now, it's possible to have that bit of a head tilt and a nod, and I'm going to give you an extra tip on nodding. There are two types of nods that we see when we observe people. One is the downwards nod like this. In other words, if this is like where you normally have your chin, some people nod by going down and then back up to normal. So they nod like this. And then there's the upwards nod, like this. That second one is better and more positive. Let me tell you why. When we go downwards like this signals discomfort, because again, we're protecting the neck, submissiveness, vulnerability, and also it breaks eye contact. It's hard to keep looking in front of you or at the person you're communicating with when you go down here. It's hard. But when you go upwards, it's easy to keep that eye contact. And also, again, it exposes the neck and shows comfort and vulnerability. So this is typically a more comfortable nod for an observer than this. So if you're actively doing that listening with that tilt, you can do a nod like this, and it really does comfort a person that they're getting through, they're being heard. Another quick tip that I'm going to add here with the nod, which isn't in the original Lowline, but I found this to be very effective, is with that nod, a quick eyebrow flash could go a really long way. So once again, eyebrow flash is something we use for social connection to signal good intentions. You know, I'm harmless. It's literally the equivalent of having your hands up. Like I have nothing to hide, we're connecting. And once again, I would never hold it like this the whole time as you nod, because that can get really weird. But at the right moment with that nod, a quick eyebrow flash can really make it feel like you're connecting with the person. The last one, the letter E, is something that if I had a chance to speak to the author of this publication, after congratulating them for a really great system for de-escalating that's backed by awesome research, I would kind of present an argument for changing what the last one stands for, because they call it express in Lowline, but in interrogation training, there's another word that is used for it that I think explains it a little bit better, and it also starts with E, and that word is empathize. They both mean the same thing. And in this case, they mean express. In other words, express how much you understand what they're saying, but the word for that is empathize. In either way, what is meant by this is every now and then when they say something, just relate to it, empathize with it, and say, oh, that must have really bothered you. Oh, I can totally understand why you feel that way. Or thank you for explaining, I would feel the same way. So you don't do this constantly after every sentence, but if they say something that you really feel like is important for them to get across, don't be scared at all to say, I totally get it. I would feel the same way. With that nod, with that head tilt, it really makes them feel like not only are they being heard, but you connect, you understand what they're going through. And in interrogation, it's a big part of getting the person you're interrogating or interviewing to open up. And so it absolutely belongs on this list. They call it express, but we call it empathize. Empathize with their position. All right, so there it was, the Lowline method in a nutshell. I will leave a link in the description to the original article where you can go read about Lowline, and all the references are there as well. Big warning. If you're seeing a lot of these signs and the person is closing distance, like you really feel like, you know, you're seeing that anger, and you feel like it's coming, it's really close, and you may not have the chance to de-escalate, the best thing to do is put distance between you and that person. So first of all, don't put yourself in a position where you can't put distance between you and that person. Being near a doorway is always nice. Being near a hallway is nice. Make sure that you can put distance. And if you feel like it's really about to get to that point, you can very quickly do a quick low line along the lines of, I really understand what you're going through, and honestly, I would feel the same way. Let me go talk to my supervisors and see what we could do for you, and get out of there. If you have to come back with a security guard, if you have to come back with other individuals, or even if it's just to give the person some time to calm down, put distance between the two of you if you feel like the aggression is coming right away. Also, another really big note, this is really, really important. I probably should have said it earlier, but this video is about isolated incidences. So you work with someone or in a social setting, or whether you know the person or not, you see this kind of thing happen, you de-escalate, maybe you get out of there, or maybe this is a patient, the situation calms down, you move on from it. This is not for behavior patterns. If you're seeing this kind of thing in your life too often, this 100% would fall under abuse. Seek help. Go to a friend, a family member. You could find a service or a hotline in your area that deals with this kind of thing. But if this is repeated behavior, please look for help. Okay, kind of an intense way to end this, but I do hope you enjoyed this. And honestly, if you know someone who works in healthcare or mental health care or law enforcement who hasn't had this kind of training, please send them this video. I think this is a really important one that can help people in certain situations to recognize when aggression is about to happen and ways to calm the situation down and get past it. I hope you enjoyed this. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of this. If you have any questions, please let me know. I don't see all the comments, but as much as I can help, I would love to, because this is something that I'm very passionate about. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this, and I will see you on the next one.